Let's continue with episode 3. She didn't know how long they rode in that rickety dark caravan, but the sun was beginning to set by the time they approached their destination. It felt strange that only a few soldiers were riding in the caravan designed for a whole troop. It made it feel bigger than it actually was, and more empty. The same question plays over and over again in her head since the moment they picked her up. How did they know where she was? The sounds of city life seep in through the caravan walls as they pull into what she assumed was a bustling town. Even the pavement beneath them turned smoother as they rode past the sound of workers and people milling merrily about the streets. There must be a lively nightlife here, compared to the other town she just left. She sits patiently with the 4 guards and the stiff body at their feet as the town life fades, and minutes later, they slowly come to a full stop. One of the soldiers that was riding horseback comes to the back of the caravan and opens the flap. "We're here. Take the body discreetly." They proceed to gather the woman's wrapped body and lift her down from the caravan. She steps out behind them onto the pavement and into the fresh evening air, then gasps as her wide eyes travel up a massive, elaborate structure looming over them. Gargoyles sit comfortably in discreet corners and arches of the building, scaring away any unseen threats with their snarling faces. Intricate patterns are carved into the stone at varying peaks of the fortress and frame the windows. It's beautiful. This has to be the king's castle. I don't know of any other place that will be as luxurious as this, she says. "Watch your feet." She turns to see one of the soldiers talking to the other as they carry her body gingerly. Do they bring all high-profile criminals to the royal castle? She's tempted to follow them to see where they're putting her, but peering through the open back door into the warmly lit castle feels much more enticing to explore. Besides, they can't be going far with her body. Wherever they're resting her isn't going to be nearly as lavish as this castle. She strides into the castle, passing a couple of guards and maids in the halls as they go about their duties. Gold sconces on the walls illuminate the enormous gray-bricked corridors, making the gold-trimmed red carpets pop. Wow, these halls are elegant. Her fingers trace against the cream fabrics draped along the walls, and the decor looks expensive, definitely fit for a king. She walks down the expansive hall that leads all the way to the front of the castle. Many wooden doors and other corridors that venture into the rest of the castle line the passageway. She gets the strong sense that you could get lost in this place for weeks, just perusing the first floor alone. "It's important to still be on time for dinner, girls, and your father asked me to add to your studies so you're ahead for the upcoming year." She's startled at the sound of a woman's voice drifting from down one of the halls, and quickly looks around for a place to hide. It's too late to find one as the source of the voices comes around the corner, so she freezes, pretending to clean off a nearby table like she belonged. The woman is speaking to 2 young ladies trailing behind her. One looks to be around 20, only a few years younger than her, and the other maybe 16 or so. They're both beautiful. Their elegant gowns give them away as royals, and their faces send warmth through her chest. None of the women seem to be fazed by her presence and breeze right by her. Her first mind was to think how rude of them to pretend like she didn't even exist. Then mentally she kicks herself and remembers they can't see her. "Yes, Miss Dow," they say softly. The 20-year-old with long braids turned to this Miss Dow with her hands neatly folded in front of her. "Has there been any word on Princess Sakina's whereabouts yet?" A worried expression creeps through her poised face. "Not yet, Princess Jeannie. Your father said he'll let us know as soon as he hears anything." All 3 of the ladies head up the grand staircase using the carved wooden banister for balance. She decides to follow them up the stairs, along with the enticing smell of food. They must be heading to dinner. The stairs are wide and covered in the same red and gold carpet as the halls. Miss Thao is engrossed in telling the girls about their new lesson plans, and they listen quietly. They have the demeanor of people who've always done what they're told. Their postures are regal and well practiced. She observes them from behind. The teenager's gold dress is stunning against her caramel skin and curly hair piled atop her head. The 20-year-old looks equally as elegant in a blue dress that fits snugly against her darker mocha skin. She thought, maybe she should spend the rest of her eternal life here, just relaxing in the shadows. It's not like she'll be in anyone's way. Plus, this place has everything. They walk the rest of the way up the stairs to the second floor and continue down a long hall, past a couple of rooms. While Miss Thao is deep in her instructions, the younger of the girls falters at an open door, peering inside forlornly. The woman can't help but notice how her frame sinks, and she twiddles her fingers nervously. "Princess Suki, we don't want to be late," Miss Thao calls over her shoulder from further down the hall. Princess Suki turns away from the door and hurries to catch up with the older sister and their servant. The woman moseys over to the door she was standing at and peeks inside at an empty bedroom with a yellow interior. This is a nice bedroom. Who would be upset about this? She continues to follow them down the winding and twisting halls of the castle until they arrive at an intimate dining room with a large wooden table in the center. Portraits line the turquoise walls between the brown-mounted lamps. She wonders if they're all family portraits, like old royals who've passed. The table is already set with fine white china and a beautiful centerpiece of dried plants mixed with live ones. A young boy that looks the same age as Princess Suki is already sitting at the table, along with a dignified and solid-looking man that she can only assume is the king sitting at the head. He's coated in a layer of lavish jewels and fabric that's befitting of his station. "There are my late daughters," he bellows as the princesses make their way to their seats. 5 maids are lined up against the wall, holding platters ready to be served. "Sorry, father," they mutter. Once everyone is seated, the king motions to the servants who peel off the wall and serve dinner. The royals all dig in. The conversation seems casual enough, but the atmosphere is stiff. Everyone is acting so formally. You would think they were guests at someone else's house and not their own. While the conversation drifts on, the woman tries to sneak a couple of rolls from a platter on the end of the table, but her hand refuses to grip the fluffy bread. Damn it. Just as she decides to try a different strategy that involves knocking down a candlestick, a soldier walks in from the entryway and swiftly approaches the king. He stands behind him and bends to whisper in his ear. This soldier's uniform is more heavily decorated than the others she's seen. Shiny medals and patches gleam proudly from his chest, with the same unique symbol stitched on his shoulders. The guard stands for a moment, allowing her to see part of his face and scruffy beard. Something about him seems off and very familiar. She stares at him for a moment more, trying to place his face. Then suddenly, her whole body seizes and stiffens as her head throbs. Fear shoots straight through her, making her legs tremble. She staggers backwards, trying to catch her breath. She realizes it's not just the uniform this time. It's him. Everything in her body is telling her to be wary of him and run. "Hakim, why aren't you eating?" the king asks gruffly as he drinks from his goblet, startling her out of her fear-induced stupor. The boy looks upset as he stares at his full plate, his jaw clenching and unclenching itself. "Why don't you have anyone out there looking for Sakina?" he asks. Everyone at the table goes silent, their forks frozen in mid-air. The king looks at his son, then slowly wipes his mouth with a napkin. "You think I wouldn't have people out there looking for my own daughter?" he says gravely. Quietly, "I'm doing the best I can." "Well, it's not enough," the boy shouts. Wow, this Sakina person sure is popular. Frustration and wariness skitters across the king's face. Before more could be said, the boy gets up from the table and storms off with tears in his eyes. Everyone seems to be in agreement not to stop him. She follows the boy out of the room, trailing him all the way down the hall to a study where he slams the door shut behind him. She walks through it with ease and finds him pacing back and forth behind one of the couches. She looks around in awe. This study is impressive. Whoever decorated it has great taste. The boy kicks off his shoes and storms over to the window seat, situated behind a giant wooden desk. He flops down onto the cushion with a huff and stares out the window. "Sakina, where are you?" he whispers, his voice cracking. "You wouldn't leave us." Feeling a bit embarrassed, she decides to explore the study to give him his privacy. He seems really upset and feels wrong to intrude on such a vulnerable moment. She makes her way to the left and circles around the other two couches in the study. All three of them form a half square that frames a giant fireplace and mantel. Bookshelves cover the entire wall on both sides of the fireplace, housing an impressive collection. In one of the corners of the room sits a smaller seating area with two armchairs facing each other and a small table between them. There are more portraits hanging on the walls behind them, but most of these are of the immediate royal family. Pictures of the two princesses, Suki and Jeannie, are hanging on the walls, along with Hakim and the king, and a beautiful woman with dark curly hair, who she can only assume is the queen. I wonder where she's been this whole time. She wasn't at dinner. She turns to explore more of the portraits on another wall, smiling at their family memories. But one of them makes her heart stutter in its tracks. She halts, stumbling as a wave of nausea pours over her. No, this isn't right. Her head snaps over to Hakim, still sitting by the window, then snaps back to the pictures with wide eyes. A medium-sized painting encased in an elaborate gold frame is hanging on the wall. Only one person is sitting in this portrait, looking regal in an elegant dress and tiara. A pleasant smile is plastered on her face, and it makes the hairs across her entire body stand on edge. It's her. The woman in the painting is her. The ground beneath her feet begins to quake and rumble. She staggers and reaches for anything to steady herself. Her skull feels like it's cracking open, and she doubles over in pain as bursts of memories zip past her eyes. Flashes of the soldier that was standing behind the king pop in and out of her mind, along with the faces of other familiar guards. The images cause her hands to shake in rage. "I'm going to kill you." Her own voice echoes all around her as the decorated soldier's face twists in disgust and anger, fire in his eyes. She feels the pressure of his hands digging into her shoulders, and suddenly, she's falling. A feeling of terror and anger rushes through her, then an immense pain, and finally, nothing. The world abruptly stops shaking, and she slowly comes back to her senses. Her breathing fills her ears as the scents and sounds of the study come back into focus. It takes everything in her to uncurl her fingers from the back of a wooden chair that has cracked underneath her white knuckles. I know who I am. Her eyes prick with tears and her face warms in anger as she stares up at her portrait. She's Sakina, the missing princess, and that guard standing in the dining room with the rest of her family is the one who murdered her.